Little baby bunting, little baby bunting, daddy's gone a-hunting, gone to fetch a... Agnes, it's me, Billy.
Welcome back for day 17 of the 31 horror films in December. Today I tackled the classic Gremlins and Gremlins 2. I got it on this 3-pack with the Goonies. Gremlins is really a classic Steven Spielberg film directed by Joe Dante. Came out in 1984 and they spent about $11 million and proceeded to make $150-some million. So of course they did a sequel, but that was for some reason 5 years later. Gremlins is, it spawned a series, I think, of films that Critters and Troll, and I think it was an inspiration for a lot of those type of films to come later. It is a black comedy. I think you could define it loosely as a fantasy black comedy. It's certainly not a horror film, although it kind of plays between those three genres in terms of how you want to categorize it. The story is a pretty simple one. You got a guy named Hoyt Axton who stumbles into Chinatown looking for a gift for his son Billy. And he runs into this Chinaman that sells him a magwai, which in Cantonese means demon. So it's a little gremlin named Gizmo, and this magwai is a cute little critter, but you cannot take him out into the sunlight. You can't put water on him, and you have to feed him. Don't feed him after midnight was the 3 rules. Anyway, Billy, of course, loves his Christmas present, and his friend, played by Corey Feldman, it was like his second acting role, accidentally pours water on Gizmo, and of course you get Spike, the evil Spike Gremlin, and his buddies, who come out and just terrorize the town, and terrorize Gizmo and everyone else. They've got a lot of different homages and entertaining scenes. There's a homage to Texas Chainsaw where Spike has a little chainsaw and he's trying to cut through Billy's bat. You've got a funny, hilarious scene where Spike sends, I guess, the grandmother, where he has one of those electric wheelchairs that goes up the steps. It's along the wall. And he somehow sends her flying in her wheelchair up through the steps and out through the window, just like a rocket was attached to it. That was pretty funny. I mean, it's really it's a black comedy, and I think Joe Dante did a great job. For $11 million, it looks like a $100 million film. The film it looks to me like the film is kind of a Fast Times at Ridgemont High reunion. You've got Phoebe Cates playing the Billy's girlfriend. Zach Galligan's playing Billy. You've got Judge Reinhold in a small role at the start of the film. Dick Miller was hilarious as the crotchety neighbor in this thing. And I thought Hoyt Axton was good as the father as well. This is the film. It's an entertaining hour and 46 minutes. It's certainly not a horror film in that respect. The film has a lot of interesting history. One of the things that came out was that a lot of people complained about the violence. And in the 80s, everyone was hypersensitive in the early 80s for some reason, but Spielberg's response was, I think the MPA's rating system is wrong. Well, if Steven Spielberg says it, with all the money behind him, ironically enough, they changed the rating system. They came out with a PG-13 rating system to accommodate him. You know, whereas if anybody else with no firepower, economic firepower behind them, you can complain all day long about the MPAA, and they're just going to do what they want to do. But it just shows you money talks and bullshit walks. You got to have money to influence what goes on around you. So that's kind of a sad commentary, but you know, it's not fair. But that's, if you want something done, you got to have a lot of economic horsepower behind you to get it done. But I think that may be the only time in history that the MPAA has actually changed its procedures because of one person and that one person's influence. A lot of special features on this thing, commentary track and making of and those type of things. So, yeah, definitely a good movie. It's not going to be one of my top 5 or 10. It's just really not my cup of tea. I mean, I consider it kind of a children's movie, to be honest with you. I mean, I enjoyed it for what it was, but it's a little too polished and for my taste. But I enjoyed it. As far as Gremlins 2 came out 5 years later. And apparently they just didn't have the right script. They just couldn't land on the right script to do it, and Joe Dante really didn't want to rehash the first film. And so at some point the studio said, well, we're going to just give Joe, we want you to do this. I mean, the first one was such a box office smash. Joe, we want you to do this, and we're going to put money behind you. And he did it, but he came up with a straight comedy. And they spent $50 million, and it was not a box office success. It lost money. Apparently, just too much time had passed. I think the momentum of the first film, they waited too long. You know, I think that was Joe Dante's takeaway: is just waited too long to put it out. But it was shot in New York. Essentially, you've got Gizmo being part of scientific genetic experiments led by a real estate mogul, and Christopher Lee is in this as the mad scientist. And of course, eventually, obviously, the bad gremlins show up when an accident occurs and water gets spilled on them, and those gremlins just wreak havoc. But the havoc is not New York City wide. It's kind of contained within this large building. So even though it was shot in New York, it wasn't like, I don't understand why they spent $50 million on it. It looks to me like, production value wise, it was comparable to the first. So I don't know where the $50 million went, but I guess shooting in New York is expensive. But they brought back Zach Galligan and Phoebe Cates, and Howie Mandel, who did the voice of Gizmo for both films. It's just a straight comedy, and a lot of the black humor, I think, is gone in it. You've got endless cameos. You got Hulk Hogan. You got Jerry Goldsmith, who did the music for both films, and cameos. You got Steven Spielberg in a cameo, Joe Dante in a cameo. Everybody that you can imagine gets their face stuck in this film. I actually didn't like it as much as the first. Again, I guess it's just not my cup of tea. I didn't dislike it, but I'm not in love with it either. So, yeah, those are the two, Gremlins 1 and 2. And I think that's going to wrap up day 17. And I appreciate you watching. Thanks.